Hello friends, it's Kayla. Welcome back to my booktube channel, the place where I read a lot of books and tell you about them. Today we're gonna read some Barbie movie inspired books, and since I haven't seen the movie yet, it's not out yet, I don't really know what we're reading for this video, but I do have some ideas. So come with me as we figure out what I'm going to read. So I just saw the Barbie trailer and I noticed a poster for The Wizard of Oz, and I have never read The Wizard of Oz. That's not my most offensive read that I'm lacking, especially as far as classics go, but it's definitely one of them. And I know that I have it somewhere on my shelves, but it's like in the depths, it's behind all of the books that I've read because I haven't read it, but it's part of this collection of little ones. I'm literally about to destroy absolutely everything up here. Ooh, I might have found it. Let's see. The Wizard of Oz. I literally was gonna show you the entire collection of these little editions because I figured I would find all the other ones first, but they're all in different sections. That was lucky. Well, now I wanna find the other ones. Okay, I found them all. They are the Pantone collection, that's what they're called, Puffin Pantone. And I've got like The Secret Garden that matches my sweater that I read. Well, I read as a child, but I also reread recently in this video series. We've got other ones I've read, like A Christmas Carol and Black Beauty, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. And then one of the only ones that I haven't read, The Adventures or Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I know, this one is more scandalous that I haven't read. You can definitely tell from the first looks at the movie and the trailer itself that it is inspired by The Wizard of Oz, the idea of this girl, Barbie or Dorothy, going to an unfamiliar land, being a fish out of water, experiencing new things for the first time. So I'm just excited to read this before the movie comes out. And as we get closer to the release date and there's more like marketing stuff that's coming out, press junkets and whatnot, I'm sure we'll find out more of the inspiration behind the movie, and hopefully I will have more to read. And then watching the movie itself, I'm banking on there being some books in it, but I won't know that until I watch it. But hopefully there's some type of recommendation or book mentioned in the movie, and this can be a reading books seen in the Barbie movie type of video, but we'll see.
Hiya, Barbie.
Hi, Ken.
So I've been reading The Wizard of Oz, and something that's funny is how quickly like the book gets into the magical fantasy situation, which I feel like makes sense, but my memory of the movie, and as I've been watching along with the book, which has been really fun, there's so much more build up in the movie. There's like the black and white building of Dorothy's life, people in her family and the tornado and everything, but in here it's like pretty quickly that Dorothy is off into Oz. It definitely makes sense in a children's book, and I'm sure it's probably the same with Alice in Wonderland, but the movie is more like for all ages, so they had to build out some more dynamics first. I haven't watched the movie since I was probably like 15. I'm sure many people have had that formative moment of like hanging out with your friend group and somebody goes, you know, there's a Pink Floyd album that like perfectly was made to match every scene of The Wizard of Oz. And then suddenly you're in a basement with 10 other teenagers just watching it and listening to it on mute with The Dark Side of the Moon playing. And now I'm doing something similar because I'm watching it while listening to the audiobook, and it's matching up pretty well past the beginning portion. Obviously the inspiration, when you think about it without even going to see the Barbie movie yet, like it's more about the set design and how everything is just humongous and unrealistic and like soundstage, beautiful, humongous scenery, and that's probably where most of the inspiration comes from, and how they wanted Barbie to have that theatrical fake look to it where everything is a heightened reality. What I will say about the book, just as like a book review, is it is darker than I expected it to be, and it seems darker than the movie, but that often happens with like fairy tales and their origin story and then how they've been like Disneyified in the future. Like in the book, the reason that the Tin Man was a Tin Man, he said, the wicked witch enchanted my axe, and when I was chopping away one day, the axe slipped all at once and cut off my left leg. So he had to get somebody to make him a leg out of tin. And then he began chopping again, and the axe slipped and cut off his other leg. And they just had to keep building him a body of metal. And I unmuted and listened to his history and telling how he became a Tin Man, and none of that was in there. And then also there's this moment in here where the witch sets the Scarecrow on fire, and then the Tin Man jumps into the flames to put it out and save the Scarecrow from burning alive. There's a couple other things in here that I think they just couldn't do for the movie, like certain creatures that wouldn't really make sense. There's all of these mice, and there's like a mouse queen that I don't know how they would pull off, and there are certain creatures in here that I haven't seen in here. And then another thing is they have to wear green goggles when they approach the Emerald City to like protect their eyes, and I think that would have just been an annoying element to have all the characters wear goggles for half the movie. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap this experience up and give you my final rating. I finished it and I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I think it's interesting and fun to see the changes between the book and the movie. I also think that there are different like editions of the book. Things have been changed in different times. I'm not really sure like which version I was listening to. I think there was a little bit too long of them like traveling through the woods. Like it was days and days where they were like walking through the woods and had to chop down a tree to walk across this thing, and she had to climb on the lion's back for them to walk through the night. They were encountering all of these different evils. There wasn't like one main antagonist. There was a lot more going on and it was a fun time. It was just a little bit long for a children's book. And it's a familiar quest kind of story where this group of characters comes together and they have to accomplish a common goal, which in it, I mean, book versus movie is like stealing the witch's broomstick versus killing the witch. I don't think I'll continue in the series, but I had a good time and I'm sure it will inform Barbie in some way, but more so the movie and the visuals and the fun of watching it all. Okay, the press tour has really kicked off at this point, and so many members of the cast are talking about Movie Church, the nights that were put on by Greta and Margot to get like inspired, to see where the ideas from Barbie came from, to get more in touch with whatever. So I've been keeping an eye on the interviews. I've been jotting down all the movies that have been mentioned, like The Wizard of Oz. And then we also had Splash and Saturday Night Fever and Grease and Oklahoma, a lot of musicals, and the big stage production of it all makes sense, and what inspired like the look of Barbie seems to be the tone of this. And then Greta just sat down and did an official Barbie watch list with Letterboxd. Speaking of Letterboxd, we all know that like Margot Robbie's list was exposed. Somebody found a list that said watch for Barbie, and there were a couple movies on it. And one of them has a book. It's called Puberty Blues, so I did pick that up. This is an Australian coming of age movie, which totally makes sense. And then in an interview with Vogue, Margot Robbie said that Greta was inspired by this best-selling book, at least partially, called Reviving Ophelia, which she read as a kid. And something that these both have in common is they have to do with like coming of age, you know, puberty, that time in life when things are shifting and you become much more aware of the outside perspective of you, how people are perceiving you, and you start to change, you know, your personality to fit what is expected of you, and the pressures and the self-confidence issues start to come to light, especially with teenage girls. A quote from Greta said, "My mom would check out books from the library about parenting and then I would read them. They're funny and brash and confident and then they just stop. How is this journey the same thing that a teenage girl feels? All of a sudden she thinks, oh, I'm not good enough." So Barbie in the movie is going to have all of this confidence, you know, the world was built for her, and then something starts to influence her to think she needs to be more special or more interesting or more pretty or whatever it is. So these are the two things that I'm going to be reading. This I found and picked up. It is like somebody ran it over clearly. I don't know what happened to it, but I was lucky to find these online. So I'll check in with you when I've started these.
Hiya, Barbie.
Hi, Kim.
Okay, I finished Puberty Blues. I'm not gonna rate it because it, you know, it's an older title. It's from like the 70s. It's very much about 70s surfer culture in Australia, which is why I imagine Margot Robbie like probably grew up with it and maybe was rewatching the movie as maybe because it's set on the beach and it is about this formative time. Like it's just something that she wanted to check out. This is following a teenage girl, well, a couple teenage girls, and them just getting very caught up in like the toxic culture that was going on, and the surfer boys taking advantage of girls, often a couple years younger. You know, this isn't an original story. It reminds me of watching 13, which I watched at 13. It was very impactful for me, and like that jarring look at these teenagers doing like nasty things, having all of these moments of doing drugs and drinking and having sex, and it's all sensationalized. And then it also brings in like the negative aspects of it and how you can go down this dark path. And I think this did do that. Like it looks bright and fun, but it is called Puberty Blues. Like this isn't a heartwarming story. It is sad, it's devastating, but the people don't really realize that it is because it's just what they're surrounded by. And it's that typical teenage story of wanting to do things you're not allowed to do and wanting to seem more mature than you are. But I don't think the overall goal of the story was to teach any type of lesson. It was just to give like an insight into what was going on and teaching us about the different beaches and who hung out where and how the ugly girls were treated versus the skinny girls and how eating disorders were so rampant. But nobody is recognizing any of those things for being harmful. It's just the way that everybody's living. I can definitely see how in its day picking this up was something shocking and like, oh my God, I can't believe I got my hands on this like nasty little story because I don't think it was the norm for books of this age range to be so explicit about what the girls were doing.
Hiya, Barbie.
Hi, Ken.
Let me start off by saying, I think that everybody, every age group, the time you read this in your life, the time you read this in history, everyone's gonna have a totally different perspective and reaction to this, and that's totally valid. For some reason, I found this fantastic. And I think there's some psychological reason for me that nonfiction, specifically self-help, I just don't drive with. And I'm sure there's something with my mind that is because like I don't want advice. Like I don't want to be critiqued within a book and be told that my relationship with this, that, and the other is bad and how I can benefit from this, that, and the other. So perhaps because this was written like for adults dealing with the younger generation and just like exploring the issues that adolescent girls have had throughout the past couple of decades. And it wasn't aimed at me as the reader and was more about like the ability to understand others. It really landed for me. And if I was the mother of an adolescent teenage girl, I think it would be super beneficial for me. And I think it's fascinating that Greta read this as a child, though it was a different edition of it. And the idea of reading parenting books as a teen, I think would actually have been more beneficial to me than picking up books that were aimed at me as an adolescent. Because it's like you're looking at it through different eyes and it's somebody giving advice to your parents. And I think I could have learned more reading this being aimed at like the adults in my life who were trying to understand me than if I felt like the book was trying to understand me and tell me what to do. With that said, I think if you read this in the 90s when the original, or 2000s, whenever the original came out, no, yeah, it would have been the 90s because this is the 25th anniversary edition and it came out in 2019. So there was clearly a lot missing. It was like a 200 and something page book and now it's 400 pages. And the intro from the doctor who originally wrote it and her daughter who contributed to this edition talk about the original one and how things have changed since then and how there are so many fundamental things that are the same between being an adolescent girl in the 70s versus the 90s versus the 2010s. But with the introduction of so many different things like media, social media, just the way that the world has evolved, and especially I think the ability to like know everything about everything, how it's such a great thing that you can go and find news about anything in the world and you can learn about every different group that exists, and there is so much freedom with the internet and technology, but how you have to approach so many different things as a parent to somebody growing up in this age of technology, and how harmful a lot of it is because you can see every negative thing that's happening to everyone in the world at any point in time, and it adds so much anxiety to so many young girls. I wouldn't say that this added anything new to my life that I hadn't thought of before or wasn't just naturally in my mind as somebody who grew up like in the age of technology and the effects of everything on my own mind. But when you add like her personal meetings with different clients, because she is a therapist, and you add in all the statistics, like it just made for a really interesting read. I flagged quite a few different things. A lot of the book, especially the second half where there's not much tabbed, is a lot of her client explorations, and she does make a lot of generalizations about adolescent girls based on like, you know, the 30 young women who are spoken about in here and who share their experience that I'm sure would not apply to everybody. But I think she does a really good job of talking about how this doesn't represent everybody. And every single parenting technique, like there is no answer. She's not saying this is how to do things. She's saying this is a client who came to me with an issue, an eating disorder, being bullied, the anxiety from social media, feeling isolated, having parents being divorced, I'm experiencing a death, teen pregnancy, drug use. Here's what this person came to me and had a problem with. Here's what her parents shared and thought she was having a problem with. Here's how I got actual answers out of her, and here's how I helped her. And I just think this was such an interesting pairing for me reading it immediately after Puberty Blues, because it felt like like a take on that and the ability to like recognize what was happening in puberty blues. In the intro, it was like something dramatic happens to girls in early adolescence. They lose their resiliency and optimism and become less curious and inclined to take risks. Almost all heroines of time-tested girls literature come from this specific age group, pre-adolescence, like Anne of Green Gables and Heidi and Pippi Longstocking. Girls this age bake pies, solve mysteries, and go on quests. They can take care of themselves and are not yet burdened with caring for others. They have a brief respite from the female role and can be tomboys, a word that conveys courage, competence, and irreverence. But then in junior high, you start to hear about so many other things, and there's so much influence coming from so many different directions, and you feel like you don't even know who you are anymore. I think my favorite part was the take on like finances and education and how things are so different for this generation. My generation, even compared to my parents, which is like viewing college for people older than me especially as just this time to like discover who you are and have this freedom and figure out what you want. And nowadays it's like when Liam goes to school, it's going to be so much more focused, and like the teens in here talked about, on what's actually going to get you a good job and financial security and not graduating with too much debt and having to have a job while you're in school. And obviously everybody's situation is different, but I just really liked the kind of humbleness she came at this with about how she did grow up so differently. Anyway, I had a great time with this. I just appreciated it more than I guess I thought I would. So that's that. I had a big success. Before I see the movie, I think it's imperative that I take a quiz to find out what Barbie I am or what character in the movie I am, so I can watch it with that in mind. I saw the Barbie cast doing this BuzzFeed quiz, so obviously I'm gonna do the BuzzFeed quiz. I want to be author Barbie because it's book related, and also I just really like Alexandra Shipp. She's one of the actresses that I was really excited that was going to be in the movie because she has done adaptations before, and I love book to movie stuff. And speaking of adaptations, this is why I think that there could potentially be books in the movie, like real books, because obviously Greta is a huge fan of books. Margot Robbie consistently talks about like all of her quote unquote nerdy fandoms that she's a part of. Like I know she loves Garth Nix and Lev Grossman. And then the production designer and the set decorator are pretty iconically known for doing adaptations. So there's bookish love everywhere. The only thing that's holding me back is that it's in a fantasy world. And so I think if author Barbie does have a book and she writes books and there are books present, they're probably going to be fake, like they have fake titles, or they're just like the spines, they just look like they're toys. But we do also get to go to the real world, and another one of my adaptation queens, America Ferrera, is in the real world, and so we might see books there. That's what I'm thinking. Let's see what character I am. First, what quality you look for in a friend? I mean, all of them, but would anybody think like, oh, I want my friend to be creative over kind, loyal, and empathetic? I'm gonna say loyal. Pick a color to paint your dream house. I'm gonna say sunset orange. Pick a Barbie to co-host your slumber party. Author Barbie! Oh my god, there she is. Now to pick a movie to watch with all your best friends. Mamma Mia, I've never seen it, sorry. Bring It On, an all-time favorite. The Notebook, you know, what made everyone fall in love with Ryan Gosling. Little Women, which is one of my all-time favorites. The Wizard of Oz, amazing. And To All the Boys I Loved Before. Okay, if it was by myself, it would be a different answer. With friends, Bring It On would just be such a fun rewatch. Choose a song to belt out at karaoke. It's none of them. If I was with a group of girls, Beyonce would be the one that we would pick. Choose the inspiration for another iconic toy-themed movie. American Girl dolls, I never played with. That was American, I'm Canadian. Tonka trucks, Cabbage Patch Kid, Beanie Babies, Webkins, Barrel of Monkeys. I had a few Beanie Babies. I think I have to say that one. And finally, choose something from Barbie. Mattel headquarters, Barbie's cowgirl outfit. I feel like we're going to see a lot of people Halloween looking like that. Also the real world in those skater outfits. Barbie's giant blowout party, Weird Barbie's weird house, and the Ken War. I have to choose one just for what? I'm going to say the party because she looks so pretty there. Oh, I'm somehow Weird Barbie. Well, yeah, that checks out. Ooh, actually, I saw an Instagram post. My friend Nina post recommendations for Barbie. Thriller horror books on Barbie's reading list. For Barbie, Natural Beauty seems like a fun one. For Dr. Barbie, interesting. Author Barbie, got those ones. Read The Writing Retreat is so good. Mermaid Barbie, that totally checks out. Books that I didn't love. We've got President Barbie. I love that cover. Is yes, Weird Barbie. Bunny, and Every Time We Meet at the Dairy Queen, Your Whole Face Fucking Explodes. I've never heard of that. I obviously need to figure out what that is. Today is the day we finally go see the Barbie movie. I'm so excited. We are going to the drive-in. I feel like I ordered the perfect color Barbie top, but it got here and the fabric is just not something that I can wear for multiple hours out when it's like 34, I think is the high today. And I remember last time we went to the drive-in, last summer, we saw Grease and we were like boiling hot. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to change into something a little more breathable. But I am gonna put together Rob and my candy boxes because I went to Bulk Barn and I bought every single pink candy that they had. And while I put this together, I'm gonna tell you about 2 clips that I've seen related to books and the Barbie movie. The first thing we've got are teeth. I think maybe they're vampire teeth, but no, they're just normal human teeth, which is not unsettling at all. Then these little chalky ones, then little puffy marshmallows. I didn't even realize what these ones were. I think you'd say fish, but I think they could also be rabbits if you wanted them to be, which I do. I have no idea what these are. And then these are like cinnamon hearts. I don't know if they're still cinnamon when they're pink. And then these ones I always just keep in the house. So they're strawberry frosties. They're my favorite candy. We'll have a generous helping of those. And now I don't know if there's enough space to shake it because I'm trying to make a candy salad. Look how cute it looks. Okay, and as for the 2 clips that I saw on TikTok this week, one of them was from GQ, and it was Ryan Gosling going through his like Ken bag and telling us everything that was in it. It was funny, it was silly, and one thing he pulled out was a horse book. So I was like, oh, perfect. Let me look it up because maybe it's in the movie if it's also in the promo. And the author is nowhere to be found. I couldn't find it on Goodreads. Couldn't find it anywhere on the internet, so it was obviously a fake book. And I could kind of tell that when I looked at it because the cover doesn't look like it's actually a cover. It looks like paper that has been folded. And I was right because when I went on IMDb and searched it, I found the author who it's attributed to is one of like the camera crew on the movie, Ryan Besson, and his Instagram says he's a clapper loader. So everything checks out there, which also implies that that book was made during production and wasn't made like for this GQ promo. So I think that confirms my beliefs that we are gonna see fake books in the movie. But there will be one book in the movie because Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling did some promo and they were talking about how every day on set, she gave him a Ken themed present that was pink. And they started talking about how one of the gifts was a book. And then Margot says,
the book made it into the movie.
Which book?
The horse book.
I want to make that book into a movie, so don't talk about it on camera because someone will get the rights. She gave me a book as a joke, which I started reading and I was like, this is the movie I'm supposed to...
He's like, this is a really good book. I'd ordered it because it was like called Man
Don't. Please.
And then in the movie, when Barbie goes to the house when it made it into his Kingdom land, and he's like, oh, you caught me reading. Ryan held up the book.
So I will be looking out for that scene. I'll see if I can capture it while I'm at the drive-in. And even if you can't see the title really clearly, I'm assuming based on the cover, I'll be able to find it and figure out what it was. I have a couple theories. She says it was called Men and Horses and then gets cut off. There is a book out there called Men and Horses. There's also a book out there called Man and Horse, something, something, something. But it's throwing me off a little bit because they said that all the presents were pink. So the other ones that came to mind is I found a book called The Man on the Iron Horse that has a pinkish cover and one called Ride the Pink Horse that has a pink cover. There's obviously like the horse and his boy, like that wouldn't be it because they were talking about how it's not a well-known book and Ryan wants to turn it into a movie. So once I see the cover, it'll confirm or deny and then I can order the book. We're here at the drive-in. There's the screen. Growing up with Barbie, I only ever had one Barbie. My parents were not buying me like Mermaid Barbie and Dr. Barbie. I just had the one. But what I did get was all the accessories. I had the Barbie Jeep. I didn't have the Barbie Dream House, but I had a Lego Dream House, which was like just as good. And then since I grew up with Barbie on a budget, I got the Kelly dolls. So Kelly was her littlest sister, and I think she got rebranded to be Chelsea, but when I was a kid, Kelly and all her friends, I collected all of them. I have a picture of me getting one of them and then a bunch of accessories. Like my one Barbie I had the most outrageous shoe collection. I had the tennis racket and the boom box. Oh, and I had one Barbie book, but it was like Barbie Next Generation. And I actually reread it recently in a childhood favorites video. Otherwise I would have reread it in this one. Never had many in the Barbie collection. I didn't end up wearing pink, but everybody else is. It's beautiful. Hello. I loved Barbie. That's my review. That's all you need to know. I loved it. And there were books, but we'll get into that. I think like if we're talking about the musicals that inspired it, I can totally see it. All of the staging, all of the fake look to everything. Visually, 10 out of 10. Musically, it was also incredible. I think Ryan Gosling stole the show a little bit. I wanted like Margot Robbie to have one just like epic song maybe by herself, and it could have brought it to a 10 out of 10. But the songs, especially that the Kens were involved in, it was like with the guitars and the singing and then the huge like war scene, incredible. And I loved getting to understand which Barbie Margot was representing, because she was just Barbie, but there was all the other Barbies, and getting to understand her character and what she was cool. It was a campy good time with a good message, and America Ferrera had a great little speech that I know had a lot of, especially moms, like tearing up about like pressure and expectations. And I can totally see now how the books that I read were like reflected in the movie because of that time in adolescence when everything is changing, when priorities and pressures are shifting, and Barbie going to the real world and seeing reality for the first time and then not liking it and wanting to go back to like peace and happiness, but not be able to get there because everything's just changed and everything's been tainted in reality. For Barbie, that was Ken tainting things. So speaking of that, I did film the scene that I heard them talk about, and he was indeed holding a book when she caught him reading, and it was the Man and Horse book. So that's something I guess I have to read now. And all of the other books seen in the movie seem to be fake. They seem to have fake titles and fake authors when Ken goes to the library in the real world and gets all of the books and learns about the patriarchy. I won't be reading any of those. So, do you want to give us any of your thoughts on the Barbie movie? I give it a 9 out of 10.
I wouldn't go as high. I'd probably go like a 7.5.
I would rewatch it, that's all I know, which is a pretty big deal for me.
And the only reason I'd give it a 7.5, I'd rewatch it too, is because I feel like they should have used the Barbies more.
You just wanted to see Dua Lipa more.
No, I just mean like in general. Because like the guys got like the Ken song, and they got like, I don't know, there's just, it felt like a lot more development. But for a Barbie movie, it felt a lot like a Ken movie.
Are you going to read the Man and Horse book with me?
No.
Oh. You know it was a 10 out of 10? Going to the drive-in together.
Yeah, it was fun.
And eating our pink candy.
Yeah.
Hiya, Bobby.
Hi, Ken.
All right, I've gotten a hold of the final book, Man and Horse. Yes, I dyed my hair just to match it. It's by John Jennings, The Long Ride Across America. I think this is going to be a great read, and it's going to inform my perspective on the movie in no way. But I'm excited to get into it. It's now fall. I have no idea when this video is going up. Clearly, I've been filming it the entire time that Barbie has been coming out. But I am not posting it until the writer's strike and the SAG-AFTRA strike are over. I've definitely seen other people reviewing it and talking about it, and I in no way want you to think that I think that they're in the wrong for like as if it's crossing the picket line or anything. It's not. SAG-AFTRA has not called for like a public boycott or anything like that either. So like everybody going to see the movie, including myself, are perfectly justified. I don't know why I'm still holding this. I would just feel like weird personally actively promoting a movie produced by a struck studio in this time. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just not interested in contributing to the like Hollywood publicity machine that social media is during a strike. But it's definitely been interesting coming across, I think I've only really seen it on TikTok, is people talking about and reviewing the movie. I don't think it's without its critiques. Obviously, I'm excited to rewatch it when it streams. I think that's supposed to be this month or next month. My first watch was very much just enjoyment, especially at the drive-in. Like, are you paying super close attention to every little thing in a bad way and a good way? It's like, I want to rewatch so I can get all of the little things that maybe I don't love, but also all of the fun, tiny nods that I might have missed the first time around. I think generally it's been received really well. There is definitely a critique of it, which is all fair. I think there's also like a small group of people though that are very vocal, saying how horrific the movie is. And I truly think that's interesting to watch, and not the kind of critique that other doll-focused or toy-focused movies have ever gotten. Maybe because this is Barbie specific, maybe because Barbie has been primarily related to girls and women. It actually weirdly reminds me of another recent release, book specific, Yellowface. Maybe because they both critique the industry that they are actually about within them, and that's kind of fun to watch, but also it is kind of surface level and entertaining and doesn't go as deep as some people would like. But at the same time, when I see people like absolutely loathing these things and the things that they say about them, it feels very much like they thought that this movie or book was going to be the greatest thing of all time, maybe because it critiques the industry that it's in, or that the author or director itself thinks it's the greatest thing that was ever made, like as if it needed to be this perfect piece of art or this perfect representation of feminism. I just think that Barbie was good for all ages, and while the conversations that it brought up are ones that many of us have heard before, for some people that's the first time they're hearing about misogyny at all, or the patriarchy, and how it is harmful to everyone, including men. Especially because this is Barbie's first time also encountering certain conversations. Some of it is shallow feminism, and that doesn't make it bad feminism. And it is interesting thinking back on how much screen time the Kens got and the relationship between the world that was created versus our reality, and how much like women over the years have been put in those specific roles and had really limited screen time in those stereotypical roles, and the Kens were afforded so much more, even with all the conversations going on in the movie. So I am excited to rewatch it and have maybe a new, grander perspective on things. But in the meantime, we're gonna be reading Man and Horse. This specific man, John, in 1974, he was a young man from a broken home, and he saddled his horse named Gizmo, starting down the trail on an adventure across North America. The 7-month journey took them across 11 states, ocean to ocean. They had a transformative experience along the way. Maybe this is like the new Wild. Did I love Wild? No. But do I like outdoor stories, hiking, traveling, trail stories? Mostly, yeah. Let me check in with you when I've gotten a couple chapters in and I have an idea of the writing and the vibes of it. With this sweater, I do believe I have exhausted every pink item in my wardrobe, so it's a good thing we're on the last book. I just read the first 50 pages of Man and Horse, and I already quite like it. Nothing really of note or action has really happened so far, but I could already see this becoming a movie. This is his and his horse's first like multi-state ride, and things are already kind of going wrong. He's just having to figure things out. And I could totally imagine a montage of like him having to pull his horse's tooth because it was getting painful and infected, and one where he's like sitting on a side of the fire, and no matter where he sits, the smoke keeps following him. He found a scorpion in his boot, and then the horse ran away and he had to track it down. I feel like it's not a tongue-in-cheek, like fun kind of book, but it's also not super serious, like it's just real events of his life. And so when I imagine it as a montage, it is kind of funny though. And I really like the part I just read where he was talking about sitting behind Gizmo and looking at life between a horse's ears, and how the horse teaches him to slow down and to really listen to his surroundings, because the ears are constantly twitching. So he's obviously hearing things that the other guy's not. And to me, it feels like the kind of memoir where he's just setting out on this journey, doesn't know what's going to happen, and he's talking about how he needs to trail break the horse, and it's all about the horse and teaching the horse how to do things. But then by the end, it's going to be the discovery that like he needed to learn something himself. He needed to be trail broken as well. I wish there was an audiobook of this so I could really get his tone and inflection, because I think that'd be fun to read. But there are photos in here, which is a nice touch. And I don't think you can really tell if Ryan Gosling is being serious or genuine about wanting to make this into a movie, but it is well written and insightful, and maybe we could get an audiobook read by Ryan Gosling if he decides to actually turn it into something. As is typical with a story like this, we're getting the active adventure, but also flashbacks to his childhood, and he's talking about growing up in poverty, and he touches on the money can't buy happiness idea, and he says something that I really liked. He says, try to believe that the next time you're evicted for not being able to pay rent, or the next time they shut off your phone or electricity. Try convincing yourself that having the money for medication or to fix your child's teeth isn't going to make you any happier. The truth is, money can buy quite a bit of happiness depending upon which side of the poverty line you're sitting on. And then brings it back a couple pages later where he says, money can't buy happiness, but it allows you to be somewhat comfortable while searching for that happiness. And I really connect with that. I just realized I do indeed own one more pink piece of clothing. Like, how could I forget? the hot pink toque. My final thoughts on Man and Horse, I'm giving it a 4, and I'm just so excited that 2 nonfiction books that I'd never heard of were big successes for me in this video. It was interesting following his journey, like nothing that exciting or wild really happened. There were a couple moments that felt kind of tense, but obviously you know, because it's a memoir he's writing years down the line, that everything turns out just fine. Like there's a moment where he's about to get arrested. There's a lot of like interactions that we get to read of him with various people that he encounters along the way. A lot of like descriptions of women and like the women who he's attracted to, who he like, at one point he's bathing in this like horse trough in the middle of nowhere, and this woman comes up on a horse and she's like, this is my land. And he just shares his thoughts and his like attraction to all of the women he meets along the way. And then paired with his own story, there's just different stats about like the world at this time and how he feels about life in the 70s, and saying things like, when Gizmo and I made our journey, 60% of today's world population wasn't born yet, and just kind of sharing perspective on time. The photos in here are accompanied by his thoughts about photo taking and how, you know, social media makes people live life for the internet and not take photos more organically and take their time and slow down. I liked most of the stuff he had to share. Nothing was really like life-changing in any way. There was like one moment where he was talking about the world then versus now. Like you could still get away with stuff in 1974, like driving without registration. You could still hitchhike most places. He said, we were not the paranoid, frightened people we are now. And I just think like that's looking at life through a very specific lens, and maybe life was better for him and his demographic in 1974. My favorite section was called Hindsight, and he's just, you know, towards the end of the book reflecting on a lot of things and what he's learned along the way. I thought this was extremely well written, well paced, well structured. If you already like memoirs, like I don't know why you wouldn't enjoy this one. I'm much more interested in this type of personal story than the nonfiction and memoirs and stuff that get a lot of hype throughout the year. Like I would rather just read this one experience of somebody doing something random than like a celebrity recalling, you know, how many auditions it took before they became famous. If you do like memoirs like that, highly recommend also picking up something like this. I had a good time. I finished this in the bath and got to use some of my Barbie bath bombs that I bought at Lush a couple months ago. I did end up watching a couple movies that were mentioned. None of them really stuck out to me as things that I really enjoyed, but I think it's fun to see what has inspired Barbie. And this video overall was a real joy to make. I've read some interesting things. I'm glad I can post it before the end of the year. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye, Barbie.